The lights of Los Angeles shimmered like scattered diamonds across the horizon as Ethan Reynolds stood by the glass wall of his penthouse, watching the city he practically owned breathe beneath him. Traffic crawled along the boulevards far below, tiny streams of light and motion that felt insignificant from this height. Everything in his world was supposed to feel like this, controlled, distant, perfect. Behind him, laughter echoed softly through the mansion-level penthouse, where guests in tailored suits and designer gowns mingled with champagne in hand. It was the annual Reynolds Foundation Gala, a night dedicated to charity, influence, and carefully curated appearances. Every handshake tonight was a transaction. Every smile had weight. And Emma Reynolds, his wife, was the reason half the city had shown up. She moved through the crowd like she belonged to a different world entirely, graceful, composed, radiant in a deep emerald gown that caught the light with every step. People admired her, but Ethan knew the truth. Emma didn't just attend these events. She studied them. Every conversation she had tonight lingered a fraction too long. Every laugh felt measured. Every glance carried intent. Ethan noticed, but didn't question it. Not yet. At 9:42 p.m., Emma leaned in and kissed his cheek lightly. "I need to step out for a bit," she whispered. "To where?" he asked. "Fresh air," she said with a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. Too many people pretending to care about the world. Then she was gone, slipping through the crowd toward the private hallway that led deeper into the mansion. Ethan watched her leave, a faint unease tightening in his chest. But he pushed it down. Tonight was not the night for paranoia. Tonight was success. At 10:15 p.m., Emma had not returned. At 10:47, Ethan began asking staff. At 11:30, the gala ended without her. By midnight, Emma Reynolds had vanished inside a house designed to be impenetrable. And by 3:18 a.m., the police arrived. Detective Rachel Monroe had seen wealth before. She had seen its arrogance, its blind spots, its ability to turn entire crime scenes into curated performances. But the Reynolds mansion was something else. It wasn't just expensive, it was engineered. Hallways that curved in ways that discouraged memory. Security systems that tracked movement like a living organism. Staff who spoke too carefully, as if even their words were recorded. And in the middle of it all stood Ethan Reynolds, barefoot, exhausted, still in his gala suit, watching officers move through his home like ants in a disturbed nest. "You're saying she just disappeared?" Rachel asked him. Ethan shook his head. "She left the party. Said she needed air. She never came back." "Did she have any reason to leave without telling you?" His jaw tightened.
No.
Rachel studied him. Billionaires rarely looked like criminals at first glance. They looked like men who had never been told no. "We're going to search the property," she said. "I already did," Ethan snapped, then caught himself. "I mean, my staff did. Every room. Every floor. She's not here." Rachel didn't respond. She had learned early in her career that missing people inside locked spaces usually meant one of three things: escape, concealment, or control. And control always belonged to someone. It was a maintenance worker who found her. Not in the main house, but in a section of the mansion Ethan insisted didn't exist on official blueprints, a service wing behind a concealed panel near the wine cellar. A place even staff avoided unless instructed. The worker had noticed a faint draft, a seam in the wall that didn't sit right. When he pressed it, the panel shifted with reluctant mechanical obedience. Behind it was a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Rachel arrived 10 minutes after the call. The air below was colder than the rest of the mansion, stale and metallic, as though the house itself had been holding its breath for years. The staircase led to a hidden chamber, small and windowless, lit only by a single emergency strip light flickering overhead. And there, on the floor, was Emma Reynolds. At first glance, it almost didn't feel real. She wasn't staged in violence or chaos. There was no dramatic struggle, no shattered surroundings.
Just stillness.
Too much stillness. Rachel knelt beside her. Emma's face was calm.
Too calm.
No visible signs of panic.
No defensive wounds.
But Rachel noticed something else immediately. Emma's fingers were slightly curled inward, as though she had been holding something when she died, and it had been taken away. In her palm, a faint imprint of pressure remained, but the object itself was gone. Time of death. Rachel asked the medical examiner. Between midnight and 2 a.m., he replied. Cause is unclear.
No habies trauma.
Could be poisoning, suffocation, or something more sophisticated. Rachel stood slowly, looking around the hidden room. And then she saw it. A wall covered in photographs. Not family pictures. Not art.
Surveillance.
Ethan Reynolds. Meeting with executives. Handshakes in parking garages. Late-night exchanges in private offices. Financial documents. Offshore accounts. Emma had been collecting something. A case. A very dangerous one. By sunrise, Ethan Reynolds was no longer just a grieving husband. He was a suspect. But what unsettled Rachel more than anything was not the evidence against him. It was his reaction to it. He didn't deny the photographs. He didn't deny the hidden room. Instead, he said something she wasn't expecting. I think she was investigating me, Ethan admitted quietly, sitting across from Rachel in his private study. But I didn't know about any of this. Rachel narrowed her eyes. Your wife was building a case against your company inside your own house, and you had no idea? Ethan exhaled sharply. Emma wasn't ordinary. She asked questions I couldn't always answer. She had access to things even I didn't control. Like what? Ethan hesitated. Then, my closest partners. The people I trust more than anyone. Rachel leaned forward slightly. Names. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. A message lit the screen. Unknown number. One sentence. She didn't die how you think she did. Ethan's hand tightened around the phone. Rachel noticed immediately. What is it? He hesitated, then turned the screen toward her. For the first time that morning, Rachel felt something shift beneath the surface of the case. Because cases like this always began with a missing wife, but they rarely ended there. That afternoon, Rachel reopened Emma's belongings recovered from the hidden room. Among the files, she found encrypted notes, bank records, and fragments of conversations. But one pattern repeated itself across everything, a network of shell companies tied directly to Reynolds Enterprises. And then she found the voice recordings. Emma's voice, calm but urgent. They think I don't see it, she said in one file. But I see everything now. If anything happens to me, it won't be random. It will be arranged. A pause. Then softer. And if I disappear, it means I got too close. Rachel listened to the recording twice. Then a third time. Because buried under Emma's voice was another sound. A second voice in the background.
Male.
Speaking too quietly to identify words, but unmistakably present. Emma hadn't been alone when she recorded this, which meant one thing. Someone inside the mansion had been with her in that hidden room before she died. Or after. And that meant Ethan Reynolds might not be the center of the story. He might just be standing in front of it. By nightfall, Rachel received a second message. Same unknown number. This time a video. She played it immediately. The footage showed Emma Reynolds alive. Not dead. Not even injured. Standing in the hidden room, looking directly into the camera. I knew they'd come for me, Emma said calmly. If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it out in time. Rachel froze. Emma continued. The truth isn't in Ethan. It's in the people closest to him. If you want to understand what happened to me, start with the ones who attended the gala. The video ended abruptly. Rachel stared at the screen, her mind already moving faster than the evidence could keep up. Because according to every official report, Emma Reynolds was already dead when that video was recorded. Or she wasn't. And someone had just rewritten the entire case. Rachel didn't move for several seconds after the video ended. The screen had already dimmed, but Emma Reynolds still seemed to linger in the dark reflection, alive, speaking, warning them as if she had somehow stepped outside the rules of time itself. But Rachel Monroe had learned one rule early in homicide work. The dead don't send messages. The living do. Which meant someone was still controlling the story. And they were doing it very carefully. She replayed the video again, slowing it frame by frame. Emma stood in the hidden room beneath the mansion, the same room where her body had been found. Same lighting. Same wall of surveillance. But there was something Rachel couldn't ignore anymore. Emma looked steady. Not like a woman seconds away from death. Not like a hostage. Like someone delivering a planned statement. Which meant either Emma had staged her own disappearance, or someone else was staging Emma. At the Reynolds mansion, Ethan sat in silence while detectives combed through his home for a second time. The media had already gathered outside the gates like vultures circling something still warm. Every screen in America now carried his name. Billionaire husband under suspicion in wife's death. But Ethan wasn't watching the news. He was staring at the same message Rachel had shown him hours earlier.
She didn't die how you think she did.
The words felt like a hook behind his ribs. Mr. Reynolds, a voice said. Ethan looked up. Detective Monroe had returned. Her expression was different now. Sharper. Less patient. We need to talk about your inner circle, she said. My what? The people closest to you. The gala guests. Your business partners. The ones who had access to this house. Ethan gave a tired laugh. That's half of Los Angeles. Rachel didn't smile. Then we'll start narrowing it down. She placed a photo on the table. A man in his late 50s, expensive suit, confident posture, handshake smile that looked practiced in mirrors. Do you recognize him? Ethan's expression tightened slightly. Yes, he said. That's Victor Hale. And who is he to you? Chairman of Hale Global Investments. One of our largest partners. Rachel watched him carefully. Was he at your gala? Yes. Did he speak with your wife? Ethan hesitated. Yes. That hesitation was all she needed. Victor Hale lived in a glass tower overlooking downtown Los Angeles, the kind of place designed not just for luxury but for distance. Everything about it screamed separation from consequence. When Rachel arrived, she didn't announce herself as a courtesy. She came as an interruption. Victor greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Detective Monroe, he said. I was told this was a private matter. It is, she replied, stepping inside without waiting. That's why I'm here. His penthouse was immaculate. Too immaculate.
No personal clutter.
No signs of real living. Just art, architecture, and silence. People like Victor didn't live in homes. They curated environments. I understand you were at the Reynolds Gala, Rachel said. I was, he nodded. Briefly. I left early. Did you speak to Emma Reynolds? A flicker. So small most people would miss it. But Rachel didn't. Yes, Victor said carefully. We exchanged greetings. That's all. He smiled again. Detective, it was a charity event, not a confession booth. Rachel took a step closer. We found surveillance material in a hidden room beneath the Reynolds mansion. Your company appears in multiple financial irregularities tied to offshore accounts. Victor's smile faded. Just slightly, but enough. I think, he said slowly, you're misinterpreting financial complexity as criminality. Rachel studied him. Then she said the sentence that changed the temperature of the room. Emma Reynolds was investigating you. Silence. Not surprise. Not denial. Silence that held its shape too well. Victor walked toward the window, looking out over the city as if considering how much of it he still controlled. Emma was curious, he said at last. Curiosity is dangerous in people who don't understand scale. Scale of what? Rachel asked. Victor turned slightly. And for the first time, his composure cracked just enough to reveal something colder underneath. The Reynolds Empire is not just a company, he said. It's an ecosystem. You remove one part, and you destabilize everything beneath it. Rachel felt it then, not fear exactly, but recognition. This wasn't just a murder investigation. It was a system protecting itself. Back at the station, Rachel dug deeper into Victor Hale's history. What she found didn't match the polished image. Offshore accounts tied to defense contractors. Shell companies linked to real estate laundering. And one recurring pattern. Every financial trail intersected with Reynolds Enterprises at some point. But what stood out most was a single private meeting 6 weeks earlier. Attended by Ethan Reynolds,
Victor Hale,
2 other executives, and Emma Reynolds. Rachel paused at that detail. Emma hadn't been a passive spouse in this world. She had been inside the room where decisions were made. which meant she hadn't just stumbled into something. She had been part of it. Or, at least, she had been pretending to be. At 2:13 a.m., Rachel received another message. No text. No video. Just a file labeled.
Є AirDraft Audio 07.
She opened it. Emma's voice filled the room again, but this time it was different. Less composed. More fractured. If anything happens, Emma said, it won't be because of Ethan. It'll be because I went around him. A pause. Then, they don't know I copied the ledger. If I get it out, everything collapses. A second voice interrupted faintly in the background.
Male. Angry.
You shouldn't have taken that. The audio cut abruptly. Rachel sat forward. This wasn't just investigation anymore. This was theft. Emma had stolen something. Something important enough to kill for. The next morning, Ethan Reynolds did something unexpected. He showed up at the police station voluntarily. Unshaven. Tired. But focused. I want access to everything you have on my wife, he said. Rachel didn't look impressed. That's not how this works. I don't care how it works, Ethan replied sharply. I need to know what she was involved in. Rachel studied him. Why? Because for the first time, Ethan's voice dropped. Because I think she was using me, he said. That caught her attention. He continued, slower now. Emma wasn't just my wife. She had access to my systems, my meetings, my partners. She knew how everything worked inside my company. Rachel said nothing. Ethan looked at her directly. And I think she was building something that could destroy all of us. That afternoon, a break came from an unexpected source. A junior analyst inside Reynolds Enterprises requested immunity in exchange for information. His name was Daniel Mercer, and he was terrified. When Rachel met him, he barely sat down before speaking. You don't understand what Emma Reynolds found, he said quickly. It wasn't just corruption. It was coordinated. Across companies. Across countries. Rachel leaned forward. Start from the beginning. Daniel swallowed. She found the continuity ledger, he said. Rachel frowned. What is that? It's not supposed to exist, Daniel replied. It's a master record of everything. Payments, transfers, off-books contracts. It ties Hale Global, Reynolds Enterprises, and 3 other firms into a single financial pipeline. Rachel felt something cold settle in her chest. And Emma had it? Daniel nodded. She copied it. A pause. And then she disappeared. Rachel's voice sharpened. Did she tell anyone? Daniel shook his head quickly.
No.
Except there was one meeting. The night of the gala. She said she was going to finalize everything. Rachel stood slowly. Finalize what? Daniel hesitated. Then whispered. Her exit. By evening, the case had split open in a way Rachel hadn't expected. Emma Reynolds was no longer just a victim. She was a player who had stepped too far into a game built by people who didn't allow exits. And now every thread pointed towards something much larger than a single mansion, a single death, or a single billionaire. It pointed toward a network, a structure, something designed to survive exposure. Rachel returned to the hidden room alone. The mansion was quiet now, almost respectful in its silence. She stood where Emma's body had been found and looked at the surveillance wall again. But this time, she noticed something she hadn't before. One camera feed still active.
Live.
She stepped closer. The screen flickered. And then it showed a room. Not the mansion. Not the police station. A different location entirely. A clean, white office. And sitting inside it,
Victor Hale.
Looking directly into the camera, as if he had been waiting for her to notice. Rachel didn't move when the live feed held on Victor Hale's face. He wasn't surprised she was watching. That was the problem. He looked expectant, like the investigation wasn't uncovering him, like it was following a route he had already approved. Then the screen went black. Behind her, the hidden room of the Reynolds mansion felt different now. Not empty, never empty, but aware, as if the house itself had finally stopped pretending to be innocent. Rachel stepped back slowly, because in her experience, when powerful men stopped reacting to exposure, it usually meant one of two things. Either they were already untouchable, or the real endgame hadn't started yet. Ethan Reynolds was already gone by morning. No note. No warning. No security clearance log. Just missing. The billionaire who owned half of Los Angeles had walked out of a locked estate like he was never meant to be contained by it in the first place. Rachel didn't need long to guess where he'd gone. Emma's ledger. The continuity file. The thing everyone was willing to kill to keep buried. And now Ethan, the man at the center of it all, was chasing it alone. He found Daniel Mercer before the police did. The young analyst was trembling in his apartment when Ethan arrived, not with violence, but with desperation so sharp it felt just as dangerous. "You helped her," Ethan said. Daniel backed away. "I didn't. She made copies. I swear I didn't." "Where is it?" Ethan interrupted. Daniel froze. That silence was answer enough. Ethan stepped closer. "The ledger. Where did she send it?" Daniel swallowed hard. "She didn't send it anywhere." That made Ethan stop. "What do you mean?" Daniel's voice cracked. "She hid it in the only place no one would ever trace. Not servers. Not cloud backups. Physical. Fragmented." Ethan felt a chill rise. "Where?" Daniel looked up slowly. "In your foundation." Across the city, Detective Rachel Monroe stared at the mansion's surveillance feed again. But this time, something had changed. A new file had appeared in the system. Not video. Not audio. A single document.
Auto-uploadet.
Titled, "If you are seeing this, it's too late." Rachel opened it. Emma's voice played again, but it wasn't the calm strategist anymore. It was the version she hadn't heard before. Tired. Hunted. Alive in a way that felt dangerously close to panic. "If this file is active," Emma said, "it means they've accelerated. I couldn't stop it in time."
A pause.
Then, the continuity ledger isn't just corruption. It's control. Money is the surface. Influence is the tool. But the real system is governance through dependency. Rachel's eyes narrowed. Emma continued. "Every company involved feeds into one structure. Not a cartel. Not a syndicate. Something older. A private authority system that operates inside governments, not outside them." Rachel whispered, almost to herself, "What are you talking about?" Then Emma said the line that changed everything. "And Ethan was never the target." A pause. He was the container. The audio ended. Rachel stood very still. Because now the case wasn't about a murdered woman. It wasn't even about a conspiracy. It was about ownership. Of people. Of systems. Of entire institutions. Ethan reached the foundation vault at sunset. It was beneath the oldest property his company owned. An early acquisition he had never personally cared about. A historical building converted into a charity archive. No one paid attention to archives. That was the point. Inside the sealed basement, he found what Emma had done. Not a file. Not a drive.
Paper.
Dozens of micro-coded documents hidden inside donation records, grants, and charitable dispersals. Each layer disguised as philanthropy. Each line a fragment of truth. And when assembled,
A map.
not of money, of power. Ethan's breath slowed as he realized what he was looking at. His company wasn't at the top.
It was a branch.
A controlled branch. And every major decision he had made for years, acquisitions, mergers, partnerships, had been subtly guided by invisible corrections in financial pressure. Someone had been steering him.
Not loudly.
Not obviously, but perfectly. And then he saw the final annotation Emma left. A handwritten note embedded in the physical stack. "If you found this, I'm either dead or removed. Don't trust Victor Hale. Don't trust Rachel Monroe." Ethan's hand stopped mid-page. Because that last line didn't make sense. Rachel had been trying to help him. Hadn't she? At the exact same moment, Rachel stood in the Reynolds mansion watching the system logs rebuild themselves in real time. Files were changing. Not being deleted. Being reauthored. As if someone was correcting history inside the database. Then her radio crackled. "Detective," an officer said urgently. "We've got a situation." "What kind?" A pause. Then, "Emma Reynolds is alive." Rachel froze. "That's impossible." "She's outside the West Gate," the officer continued. "Says she has proof of everything." Rachel felt the floor tilt slightly beneath her. Because if Emma was alive, then the body in the hidden room wasn't hers. When Rachel arrived at the gate, the woman waiting there looked exactly like Emma Reynolds. Same face, same posture, same emerald confidence that once filled charity halls and gala rooms. But something was off. Not physically, behaviorally. Like a perfect reconstruction, missing a soul. "I knew you'd come," the woman said. Rachel didn't draw her weapon. "Not yet. Who are you?" The woman smiled softly. "Emma didn't survive this," she said. "But she prepared for it." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "That's not an answer." The woman tilted her head slightly. "I'm what she left behind." A pause. Then she added, "The ledger was never meant to expose them. It was meant to replace them." Rachel felt something cold settle in her stomach. "You're not Emma," she said quietly. The woman's smile faded slightly. "No," she admitted. "Then, I'm what they built after her." Everything snapped into place in Rachel's mind at once. The hidden room, the surveillance wall, the staged video, the controlled messaging, the impossibly clean body in the basement. Emma hadn't just been investigating corruption. She had been absorbed by it. And what stood in front of her now wasn't a survivor. It was an iteration, a replacement designed to carry Emma's identity forward, or erase it completely. Inside the mansion, Ethan backed away from the documents as sirens rose in the distance. He finally understood what Emma meant. He was never the target. He was the infrastructure. A billionaire shaped by invisible hands to move capital, influence, and legitimacy through a system he never saw. And Emma had tried to break the system by becoming part of it, which meant her death was never about silence. It was about continuity. Rachel raised her weapon slowly. "Where is the real Emma?" she asked. The woman outside the gate looked at her for a long moment, then spoke softly. She stopped being real the moment she found out the truth. "A beat, then. And so will you." The shot echoed across the estate seconds later, but when officers rushed forward, there was no body, no blood, no trace of impact, just an empty space where someone had been standing, as if she had never existed at all. And in the hidden systems buried beneath Los Angeles, inside financial networks, charity foundations, offshore ledgers, and encrypted governance files, a final update executed silently. Continuity confirmed. Node. Reynolds active. Observation status unbroken. Ethan was never arrested. Rachel's report was never filed. Emma's death was never officially resolved. Because by the time anyone tried to define what had happened, the system had already moved on. And in Los Angeles, power doesn't get exposed. It gets absorbed.